The Just Lead Advancing Racial Equity Conference, hosted by New Detroit, brought together national and local speakers who provided compelling insights into racial equity and justice. Kari Frazier, Detroit is Different, provides you conversations with some of the phenomenal guests, talking dismantling racism with collaborative solutions.
Anika Goss, I'm at Just Lead 2023.
All right, Just Lead Conference 2023 with New Detroit. Detroit is Different is here with somebody that's definitely leading a lot about the future of Detroit, Detroit's future city. Anika, how are you today?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really good.
Thank you. You just left the closing session.
Yeah.
And we're dropping in some of that game.
Yeah.
That's challenging some of these systems. And we're talking racial equity and how that plays a big role.
Yeah.
It's so many facets, and I got so many questions here, and it's like, where do I go? But I'm going to go with this one. In your experience, how has this pursuit of racial equity practically manifested when you've seen it make that connection direct, where it's like, okay, this organization gets it, and what did they get?
That's a really good question. I brought up during the session what we learned in St. Paul, Minnesota, and not that things aren't going well here, because I think there's a lot of really good work here, but sometimes I do feel like it's good to get outside of Detroit, see what everybody else is working on. And this idea in the Rondo neighborhood, one of the things that they did was not only develop a community land trust, but they also developed a community investment model that would actually engage the community around restorative investment, but also bring in public and private investment to fund that investment model. And I think, and the reason why that really caught my attention is because too often we come up, and when I say the collective we, I'm thinking about those of us that are working on the ground in community. We come up with initiatives that are really novel, right? Really interesting, creative, innovative, but then we also have to do the work of finding all of the capital to raise the money and to sustain it. And if you're able to create, what I feel like they've done is create a capital stack focused on the primary areas that people have already identified was important to them, and then create investment models that regenerate. So they're going to keep reinvesting in that same neighborhood. And so then the leaders of those funds aren't constantly having to hustle to try to raise money, year over year just to keep it going. It's this kind of sustainable model that uses the existing economy to finance equitable investment, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about. Whether you're talking about microloans or mini grants for commercial real estate, or even large investment for real estate development or small business development, that money has to come from somewhere, because we know that there's still redlining in the process. I'm whispering like somebody's not going to hear us, but there's still redlining that's made up of part of the process, and the capital stack there's still a lot of discrimination in traditional financing. So if you can find a way to be able to make that investment in community that allows for that money to regenerate in that community everyone wins, including the community, the general wider community that you're in. If we win, everybody wins. I said that when I was up on the stage. If Black people win, we all win. Everybody wins. Black, brown, white, indigenous, Asian, we all win. You can't have a whole, I know you're trying to get in, but you just can't have a whole demographic of people that are perpetually living at the margins.
And really, where I was going to get in is a question that I asked, but I got to ask this in reference to that. When you said that, clearly, I do believe that, as they say, what is it? The raising tide raises all ships. But there clearly are organizations that have not bought into racial equity, but they also profit from the other side. They profit from the division. They profit from fighting against diversity, equity, and inclusion. So when encountering and interacting with organizations like this, is the engagement to combat it? Is it to ignore it? Is it to try to train and try to teach? What's the approach, and then how do you figure out what approach to take when that happens?
So a lot of the time, as I said, this idea of, so first of all, Detroit Future City uses data to back it up. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those organizations that end up being very focused on bias and focused on perpetuating discriminatory practices are not using data. Right?
Oh, clearly.
They're just using their own theory. Mm-hmm. And so what the data says is that there is a such thing as Black buying power. Mm-hmm. That in the Latino community and the immigrant community, they will create their own lending system outside of the traditional banking system, which means that there's a market there. Mm-hmm. And so the data might feel boring or elitist to people, but data is power. And using that as a weapon to protect our own communities, to be able to say, this is the truth, this is what we understand is happening in the communities that we live in. And so this policy will only perpetuate the poverty that currently exists. And the made up theories, like you'll see these same kind of, quite frankly, me personally, I don't really focus on those groups because they make up data, they make up theory that is not based on anything that's grounded or true. And so I don't waste my time on that at all. I spend my time having conversation around what the data says and how do we change the economic trajectory of Black and brown people in Detroit. Because the demographic, 93% of people here in Detroit identify as Black, brown, or foreign born. I'm focused on how they're doing. I'm focused on their well-being, their future. And the future that we're talking about is not based on any kind of imaginary, pretend, magical ponies. I want to base our future on what is happening now and what needs to change so we can have the kind of future for the city that we all want to live in.
Thank you. Last question.
Okay.
You've been in leadership positions for a minute, and rightfully
Too long?
so.
Okay.
As you possess that skill set, and definitely people know they can rely on you and come to you to take lead in something. Mm-hmm. How, as a leader, do you get that collective buy-in for something like racial equity for an organization from top to bottom? Because we can't even just naturally make the assumption just because a person's Black or brown or someone has differences, LGBTQIA+, that they're inclusive in the equity of it.
Yeah. So how, wait, I'm sorry.
How do
rephrase.
you encourage an environment and build a culture
Oh,
where the people of the organization have that?
okay, yeah. Well, how do I create that culture as a leader in the organization? You know, I have worked in a lot of very corporate type places. I've worked for city government, and I've worked for larger corporations, and where I have to put a suit on every day and all of that. And I want to be in an environment, the best places that I've worked and the best bosses that I've had have always been places that valued me and my opinion and have valued a diversity of thought and culture and ethnicity. So, if you make that the culture of where you are working, then you will set that environment will set itself. People will see, the majority of the people at Detroit Future City, the majority of the employees are women. Like not by one or two, but like we have 18 staff, and 13 of them are women, and almost 70% of us are women of color. And I think we've set a culture from the top to the bottom, whether you are a man or a woman, that this is a place that values you and who you are and where you're from. We don't always get it right? Sometimes we are working really, really hard, and we do stuff like Miss Black History Month or Miss Hispanic Heritage Month, and I have to remind them that if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing as an organization, we need to be celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, Indigenous Peoples Day every day. This is us every day. We valuing that diverse leadership and thought, and making that a core value of your organization is I take tremendous pride in that. And not only that, my board takes tremendous pride in it. So it's actually in our bylaws that 75% of the board members have to be Detroiters. So, because we're a thought leader organization, right? We're a knowledge-based organization. This Detroit Future City could flip if I left and the whole organization became white. It could easily do that and keep going, right? Because it's knowledge-based, and the majority of the people who work in knowledge economy are white, mostly male. So you do have to be really intentional about that. And we really are. We're intentional about who gets in positions, what that looks like to us. I think Zoom was really helpful to that, because then I could see everybody all at once at the same time. Yeah.
That's deep, and just definitely gave some game. And you said diversity in thought, and I want you all to keep that in mind too, because sometimes it's not, as the old adage or colloquialism in the neighborhood goes, all skin folk ain't kinfolk, meaning that the ideology, and you have to have the type of culture and environment where the thoughts, the ideas can be nurtured and manifest as well, and people
That's
are
right.
comfortable. As you said, those were the places where you felt valued, then it played out.
Exactly.
Thank you.